What's up, YouTubers? This is Matador with a classic World of Warcraft video coming to you summer 2019 from Blizzard, a remake of the original Vanilla WoW which released in 2004. We're looking at level 60 40-man raid talents for the Warrior class. This video is going to focus on either the Arms spec or the Fury spec DPS. Fury especially has a high viability in 40-man raids. Let's talk about dual-wielding Fury Warriors. Now, Fury Warriors have the capacity to become some of the highest DPS in the game. However, they're very much late game because Warriors are extremely gear dependent, which means when you're first starting out, you're not going to be doing a significant amount of damage. You have to get gear, particularly weapons, in order to do a lot of damage. But let's take a look at what the spec for dual-wielding Fury would look like. First of all, you're going to put 5 points into chance to crit. Anytime you see a free crit or hit talent, it's always a good idea when you're doing DPS. Next, you're going to put all 5 points in Unbridled Wrath. This gives you a 40% chance to generate additional rage when you deal melee damage with a weapon, and since you're dual-wielding, you're going to be hitting quite often, which means you're going to be generating rage. You'll put all 5 points into Improved Battle Shout because this is the buff you put on yourself to increase your attack power, and so you want it to be as high as possible. You're going to put 5 points in Enrage, which isn't particularly useful in a raid because you shouldn't be getting crit because you shouldn't be the target. However, its purpose is to move you down into Flurry, and it is convenient in PvP or when you're out in the world. Next, you'll put 2 points in Execute, which is a hard-hitting ability once the boss gets to low health. You'll put all 5 points in dual-wield specialization, so you need your offhand weapon to do additional damage. You'll put 1 point in Death Wish, which is an amazing 3-minute cooldown which increases your damage by 20%. It also makes you susceptible to damage, so be careful when you time this. You'll put all 5 points into Flurry. You're going to want this to proc as much as possible. Whenever you deal a melee critical strike, your attack speed increases by 30%, which combined with Unbridled Wrath means you're going to be generating even more rage to spend on abilities. At the very end, you're going to put Bloodthirst, which is your main rage ability. It costs 30 rage. It does a decent amount of damage, and your next attacks restore health to yourself. The rest of the points are going to go in the Arms tree. We'll start with 3 points in Improved Rend. You're never actually going to use Rend in a raid because bleed damage will always fall off the boss first. There's a 16 slot debuff limit on bosses, and bleeds are low man on the totem pole. We only use it because we need to get down to Impale, which increases the crit strike damage bonus of abilities by 20%, which is huge. The next points to get down to Tactical Mastery don't particularly matter. You can throw them in Deflection or you can throw them in Improved Heroic Strike. Neither are particularly important. In this case, I'm just going to throw them in Improved Heroic Strike. I'm going to put all 5 points in Tactical Mastery, which allows me to retain my rage whenever I need to stand stands. I'm also going to put 1 point in Anger Management just for convenience. It's not going to help on a boss itself because you're never out of combat, but it helps between trash pulls, and in general it's convenient when you're out in the world. 3 points go into Deep Wounds for the same reason, to get down to Impale. These will fall off the boss as well because it simply bleeds. You'll put the last 2 points in Impale, which increases crit strike damage by 20%. But for the most part, this is a solid dual-wielding Fury build for level 60 warriors. Now let's talk about Twohanded Fury specialization. This is kind of an advanced spec that not many people will go because you have to rely on Improved Slam in your rotation. When you use all 5 points in Improved Slam, Slam becomes a 1-second cast time ability, which is awkward to be a melee class where you have to do a 1 cast timer. However, it does reset the auto attack timer on your weapon. It's a bit awkward to pull off, but let's take a look at what the talents would look like. First off, you'll put 5 points in Cruelty, which is a free 5% chance to crit, and you can't beat that. You'll also put 5 points in Booming Voice. This increases the duration of your Battle Shout, which is your attack power ability. You'll put 5 points in Improved Battle Shout to make sure that that attack power bonus ability is at its highest rank possible. Next, you'll put 5 points in Enrage, solely to get down to Flurry. Every so often, Enrage will proc, and it's a good damage boost. You're going to put all 5 points in Improved Slam, since Twohanded Fury is the slam spec. You'll put 1 point in Death Wish, which is a 3-minute cooldown which increases your damage by 20%. However, it makes you take more damage, so be careful. You'll put all 5 points in Flurry, which is great to increase your attack speed by 30% anytime that you do a melee crit. You'll put 1 point in Bloodthirst because this is your go-to ability that costs 30 rage. Next, you'll move over into the Arms tree. You'll put 3 points in Improved Rend, even though you'll never use Rend because bleeds are not useful on bosses. Instead, you will use it solely to get down to Impale. The next few points don't particularly matter, you just need to move down the tree, in which case I recommend you just put points in Improved Heroic Strike, although Deflection is fine too. Heroic Strike will not be used very often. You're going to put at least 4 points in Tactical Mastery, which allows you to stand stance freely without losing rage. And you will have to stand stance because you're going to put 2 points in Improved Overpower. If the boss were to dodge, you can switch to Battle Stance and Overpower, which does a hard-hitting strike on the boss, which almost always crits in this situation, which would therefore proc Flurry and give you a nice setup to increase your attack speed. In order to get down to Impale, you're going to put 3 points in Deep Wounds and then the 2 points in Impale. Impale is useful because it increases the crit strike damage bonus of all of your abilities by 20%. At this point, you have 2 points left over with which you can do whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to recommend you probably put them in Berserker Rage, just to ensure that if you're low on rage and you're trying to follow your rotation, you can just pop Berserker Rage and get back into the rotation. Let's talk about the Twohanded Arms specialization for warriors in Classic WoW. Now, I played an Arms warrior in Vanilla WoW, mostly in PvP, but I also raided on the side with him as well. Let's talk about the talents. First of all, you're going to put 3 points in Improved Rend. You're never going to use Rend on the boss because bleeds are low man on the totem pole when it comes to debuffs, and bosses in Vanilla and Classic WoW have a 16-slot debuff limit, which means that only 16 debuffs can ever be active at one time, and bleeds will get knocked off immediately, so don't waste your rage on these abilities. The sole reason you do this is to move down to Impale, which will increase the crit strike damage bonus of your abilities by 20%. The next few points don't particularly matter. You can put them in Parry Chance if you want, or you can put them in Improved Heroic Strike. Neither one is going to be particularly useful in a raid. In this case, I'm just going to put them in Improved Heroic Strike, and then I'm going to move on to Tactical Mastery. I'm going to put all 5 points in retaining 25 rage whenever I stand stance, which is important if you need to switch back and forth, which you will as Arms because of this talent right here, Improved Overpower. For the most part, you're going to be DPSing in Berserker Stance because you do more damage, and it allows you to use Berserker Rage and Intercept. However, whenever Overpower procs, you're going to have to switch back to Battle Stance to use it because it is a heavy hitting ability, and it is worthwhile. You can also put a point in Anger Management. It's not particularly helpful because it doesn't kick in on a boss. However, it is nice just to retain some rage as you're running from trash back to trash back. 3 points goes in Deep Wounds, which is great when you're soloing, but again, the sole reason for this is to get to Impale because the bleeds are just going to fall off anyway. These 2 points are crucial because it increases your crit strike damage by 20%. All 5 points will go into two-handed weapon specialization because you are going to be using a two-hander and you want it to do the most damage possible. 1 point will go into sweeping strikes, which allows you to cleave an additional enemy when you attack. The next talents depend on what weapon you are using and how often you intend on changing said weapon. If you're playing an orc, sometimes axe specialization makes the most sense, particularly if you're using the Nightfall axe, which is an axe which will put a 15% magic debuff on the boss, which allows the boss to take 15% more magic damage from your spellcasters in your raid for like 5 or 6 seconds. It's really awesome, and it's really convenient for the raid for you to have that axe if your Enhancement Shaman or your Ret Pally does not already have it. However, most of the weapons you're going to be using that you get out of raids are going to be swords, and especially if you're human, swords are in the racial trait for you, so it's most likely that you're going to go swords no matter what, because those are the weapons you're going to be picking up. You're going to put your last point in Mortal Strike, which is your main damage ability, which does a lot of damage, but especially in PvP is helpful because it reduces healing by 50%. The rest of the points you will put in the Fury tree. The first 5 will go into crit. Anytime you see a crit or hit talent, it is always useful as DPS. The next 5 points will go into Booming Voice, which increases the duration of your battle shout, which is your attack power ability. So you're going to put the other 5 points in improved battle shout to make sure that this attack power is the highest it can be. Booming Voice just saves time so that your buff is up longer on yourself, so you don't have to recast it and waste a GCD. The next 2 points go into improved Execute, because once the boss is at low health, Execute is going to become spammable, and there's a huge damage component to it. Now you're in a situation where you're left with 3 points with which you can do whatever you want. You can theory craft around what's the most useful for you. However, I think the most useful thing for the raid would be to put 2 points in improved Demoralizing Shout, which 2 points is enough to reduce the boss's extra attack power down to 0, and you can be the responsible party for making sure Demo Shout is up, and so the tank is taking less damage. I'd also put the last point in Piercing Howl, simply because this is convenient for gathering up adds on fights like Razor Gore and BWL, and other fights like that. This is a good introduction to arms as raiding. Thanks for checking out this video today. Feel free to leave a like or a subscribe or a comment down below so I know that this is helping you out. Also, check out Wowhead and other sites online for guides on rotations, best in slot items, and any alternative specializations you might want to check out.